Hello and welcome to the Rainy Night Listens podcast. I'm Hailey.
And I'm Wyatt, and this is the podcast that you save for a rainy night instead of a rainy day.
Alrighty, today we are going to be talking about the disappearance of Dennis Martin. Have you heard of this case before?
Not until today.
Well, it's very sad, as you can probably tell by the title. And so, with that being said, we're going to start with Hagen's historical word of the day.
Hagen.
Hagen. Hagen. Hagen.
Of. That's a pretty big word.
Ooh.
One of the biggest words I know personally.
I can't even spell that high.
I can't even spell.
Classic Wyatt behavior, am I right?
Okay.
All right. Dennis Lloyd Martin was born on June 20th, 1962, to Violet and William Martin. In 1969, he was just a few days away from turning 7 years old. He was about 4 feet tall and had dark brown eyes and wavy brown hair. In school, he was about 6 months behind his peers, but he was known as being a fearless kid that loved being outdoors. His family were avid outdoors people, and he often was taken along on hikes where he was easily able to keep up with the adults. One family tradition they had was an annual Father's Day camping trip with the men in the family, and this year was going to be the first year that Dennis was deemed old enough to go on the overnight camping trip. On June 13th, 1969, William, Dennis's father, Clyde, his grandfather, Douglas, his 9-year-old brother, and Dennis set out on their trip to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. They made it to the park and they made their way to the Russell Field Shelter. The Russell Field Shelter is a popular area for hikers to rest, eat, or camp while hiking. The group spent the night at this location, and the following morning, on June 14th, the group met up with some family friends and then made their way to an area that's called Spence Field. Spence Field is a mountain highland meadow that sits at an elevation of 4,920 feet. It is located on the border in between Tennessee and North Carolina and covers approximately 200 acres. It is made up of thick grassy areas and thick wooded areas that lead to multiple different hiking trails. And it is also noted to have sudden changes in elevation and drop-offs that lead into deep ravines. The day was going well as Dennis, Douglas, and 2 other boys were running around playing in this area. At approximately 4:30 p.m., the adults were about 40 yards away from the kids in a little grassy area, and they were just watching the boys play. They overheard the boys making a plan to sneak around and jump out and scare the adults. And so they watched as the group split up, with Douglas and the 2 other boys going south and then west, and Dennis ducking behind some bushes in a northwestern direction. Pretty soon, the group of 3 boys jumped out and the adults acted as though they were startled, but Dennis didn't jump out from the direction where he had gone. William, his father, waited a couple more minutes, but after not seeing Dennis, he started getting concerned and went over to where he had seen him duck behind the bushes and saw that he wasn't there. He began calling Dennis's name, but didn't get a response, and soon the entire group was calling for him and looking for him. William searched and called Dennis while hiking almost a mile before making his way back to where the group was, hoping that they had found him. But unfortunately, Dennis wasn't there when he returned. He frantically began calling for him and went another 2.5 miles in the general direction where he had last seen Dennis, but he couldn't find him. While this was happening, Clyde, Dennis's grandfather, made a 7-mile hike to Cades Cove to the nearest park ranger station and informed them of what had happened. He got there at around 8:30 p.m. The park rangers, upon being informed of Dennis's disappearance, set out to join in the search. Dark storm clouds began forming overhead, and around 2.5 inches of rain came down that night. The search continued through the whole night, but with the heavy rains and darkness, they didn't locate him. By 5 a.m. the following morning, on June 15th, the park had set up a base camp at Spence Field for the searchers. They had one crew of 30 people, 10 crews of about 2 to 4 people, and a helicopter involved in the search. In addition to that, park maintenance personnel, 2 different county rescue squads, and the local hiking club had also joined in the search. Soon after this, 2 visitor horse parties, 30 Boy Scouts that were camped at one area nearby, and 8 Boy Scouts camped at another area nearby joined in the search. And everyone that had joined in were walking the trails and were searching the drainage areas from all of the streams that were nearby. Later in the day, 51 ranger students, 9 jeeps, 3 maintenance trucks, Air Force personnel, 2 Huey helicopters, special forces, and the Air Rescue Service joined in the search for Dennis.
Wow.
And this is actually one of the biggest searches for a missing person that has ever happened in a national park, with around 1,400 people being involved by the end.
Wow, that's crazy. I'm glad though. I mean,
Yeah.
it shows that they
Cared.
and wanted to find him.
Mm-hmm. The search continued through the next morning on June 16th. Search parties began recombing through the trails and drainage areas that surrounded their location. Multiple groups began making their way through the dense rhododendron and laurel thickets. They separated the area into a grid, with groups taking different sections and combing through everything. News outlets, both locally and nationally, were covering the search as it went on, and more groups from all over were offering their services to help. Some people brought in their dogs, but they believed that the heavy rains had hindered this option.
Yeah.
On June 17th, more heavy rains and dense fog rolled in. The search didn't stop, though, and groups continued searching for Dennis, and volunteers were patrolling the lakes and streams in the surrounding areas. A couple of people found some small-sized footprints leading down to a stream, and it looked like one of the feet was possibly barefoot. But after looking at the prints more, it was determined that they were too large to belong to Dennis and probably belonged to one of the Boy Scouts. Some people still think that these prints were looked past too quickly, though.
Yeah.
Because what were the odds of a single set of footprints of that size being in the mud with one of the feet being barefoot?
Yeah.
And if it had been one of the Boy Scouts, you would think that it should have been accompanied by at least another set of footprints, if not more.
Yeah.
And so they never really went back and looked at it more because they had figured it was one of the Boy Scouts, but
It was a little too quickly overlooked.
yeah. On June 18th, William was going to be taken by helicopter that had a loudspeaker system installed on it so that he could call for Dennis over the speaker and provide instruction on what to do so that he could be found. However, when the helicopter that was going to pick him up landed, the rear propeller struck a rock and caused enough damage that they weren't able to take him up.
Seriously?
Mm-hmm. And so once they were able to repair it, they had to send it back to base.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Different groups set up large bonfires that night in hopes that Dennis might see one of them and make his way to it, but that didn't work. And on this day, multiple clairvoyants began reaching out with their predictions on whether or not Dennis was even alive, and told searchers where they believed he was located, but none of these panned out.
It's a little, I don't know, I feel like it's a little
Different.
Well, it's a known thing that proclaimed clairvoyants will do stuff in those times, but it always just felt kind of like I'm trying to get popularity off of this. I'm trying to get the spotlight
Yeah.
on. I don't know. I'm not gonna say they were all fakes, but I feel like some were definitely fakes that wanted, you know.
Yeah. I feel like I've heard about different cases having people who claim to be clairvoyants come forward who have said that they've actually helped solve other cases, but I've never taken the time to look into it enough to see how true any of those claims
Yeah.
are.
Like I'm not gonna say it's unrealistic. It's just a lot of times I feel like some people are just trying to get their hands in things they should just
Yeah.
let, you know.
Yeah. It's sad. From June 19th through June 23rd, the search continued with no luck. On June 24th, a report was called in about a little boy someone saw that was wandering one of the roads nearby near a campground, and they claimed that the little boy was wearing a red t-shirt with green shorts, just like what Dennis was wearing when he disappeared. So a group of rangers went to investigate, and they did locate the boy. However, it was not Dennis. The rangers let the parents of the child know what was going on, and the parents quickly changed their son out of that clothing to prevent any more calls or resources being used to go investigate.
Yeah. That's sad.
Yeah, it's super sad. On the 25th, the Rangers announced that the search was going to begin scaling down on the 29th if no headway was made. And on the 26th, multiple reports of bad odors began coming in, and each of these were investigated, but they were all determined to be small animals or a dog that had expired, and so none of them
Yeah.
were Dennis. Between June 27th and June 29th, nothing was uncovered, and so the searchers disbanded and left. William and Violet, Dennis's parents, met with the FBI and the head rangers to determine what to do next. The FBI informed the Martins that because there was no evidence of foul play, they couldn't open up an investigation, and the Martins decided that they were going to offer reward money for anyone who may have information that could lead them to their son. Sadly, Dennis Martin has never been found.
That's sad.
There are a few theories people have when it comes to what they believe happened to poor Dennis. One of those theories is that he may have been preyed upon by an animal. The area where he went missing is known for its bear population, and that year it was kind of, which I guess ironically enough, it was more of like a drought year, and so the bears were known to be venturing into areas where they normally wouldn't be and to be a little bit more aggressive, and so some people think that maybe a bear
Yeah.
saw him. The argument against this theory, though, is that something from him would have been found. Scraps of clothing, remains, a location where a trail would have been from where the bear when he would have taken him, like
Yeah.
blood, anything, but nothing was ever found. And so a lot of people don't necessarily think that that's what happened to him, just because it seems like there would have been some form of evidence left behind if an animal had snatched him. Another theory is that he was actually abducted by someone and removed from the park. The driving reason for this is because of a gentleman that came forward a little while after the search had ended, and according to this man named Harold Key, who was a state highway engineer, he and his family were in the Cades Cove area on the day Dennis Martin went missing. He claimed that around 6 to 7 p.m., he heard what he described as an enormous, sickening scream, but he couldn't tell what direction it had come from. He went on to say, shortly after hearing this scream, that he heard something moving across the creek, and when he looked over, he saw a man moving through the bushes that looked like he was trying to hide from view. He was moving in the direction of the parking lot that was located about a half mile away. He claims he didn't say anything initially because he had just figured the guy was a moonshiner, but after hearing that Dennis Martin wasn't found, he decided to come forward. After authorities looked into the location and the time more, it was deemed that this was a separate thing from Dennis Martin disappearing because it would have been virtually impossible to reach that location that quickly. There are those who disagree with this, though, and believe that someone could actually make their way to that location within the allotted time frame. And so, piggybacking off of that, some people actually believe that he may have been stolen by feral people who supposedly live in national parks. Again, this comes from the Harold Key story because it has been said that what the news outlets didn't report from his account was that the person who he saw was actually covered in what looked to be fur, and one of his kids supposedly thought it was a bear at first and not a person. But I couldn't find a lot more information about this being reported on outside of what has been said by different YouTubers and things like that. And so maybe I missed it, but I didn't find a lot more
It's a little
outside
bit more
of that.
open-ended.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another theory is that he sadly passed away due to the elements. The area he disappeared in is incredibly thick, and the heavy rains and temperature fluctuations could have lent a hand in his end.
That's fair. What scares, what my brain could have put together is that it scares me that, sometimes when kids are in positions like this, they get scared that they'll get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And it always makes me sad if that's a possibility, because it's they rather would have you found. They wouldn't be mad at you.
Yeah.
But I know that there are times when people, kids, will think they'll be mad at me for being gone or something. But
Yeah.
I hope that's not what happened, because it always makes me really sad when I hear about those kind of things,
Yeah, and I agree. While I was researching this, there were a few articles that talked about it's like a weird, I don't know, almost like mentality that's taken on where people who become lost become afraid of searchers and become afraid of just different things. And so it's a good possibility that did happen too.
Which I hope that's not what happened, because it's really sad if so, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Just one of those things that makes you think,
Yeah. The reason I had chosen this case as one to cover was because every time I've heard about this case, it was talked about as though Dennis Martin was part of some bigger, more paranormal instance that took place, or some big conspiracy, or something to that effect. But the more I looked into it, I have come to the opinion that this just isn't the case, but that it's just more of a sad case of everything that could go wrong did go wrong. I think that he may have gotten turned around as he went off by himself, and according to the case report from the National Park Service, his father had actually initially told them that Dennis was pretty quiet and was very unlikely to call out for help because of this. And so with that, combined with the heavy rains that hit, I feel like it was just kind of a perfect storm of
everything not going right.
Yeah. And the national parks have actually said that they've learned from this case not to have so many people involved in searches and to have a more controlled search, because any trace of Dennis after the rainstorm could have been trampled down as well, because there were so many people going in and out. And so it's just really sad, because if that is the case, everyone was doing their best, with what they had, but I don't know. I feel like it all just lends to everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong.
Yeah.
And I don't see this as some huge conspiracy case that is like an FBI cover up or anything like that.
Yeah.
I don't think feral humans stole him. I think that it was just a sad case of a poor kid got lost in the woods and ended up succumbing to it.
Yeah.
Because like the area is so thick, the area is like they were saying that searchers were trying to like belly crawl through thickets and stuff trying to get through it. Like people were having to cut their way through it. Like it wasn't just this sparse area. It was this very dense
woods.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's just really sad to me.
Yeah, it's really sad to think about.
Yeah. What do you think happened?
It's just with things like woods, no matter how large the search party is, I feel like just like a national park too, it's just so much area. Like you could walk in a straight line, and if they walked like even 1 degree off that same straight line, you wouldn't find them. Like it's just it's really sad. It's one of those things like it'd almost be better to have a lot of manpower like they said, but at the same time it's too much area to hope, especially if he was hiding somewhere for warmth. Like what if he was, like cuz at times people will hide inside like hollowed out logs or like under a bush or something, like to stay warm or to hide from animals. Like it's just it seems very possible that he could have just gotten lost and was never found, which is just all around sad no matter what conclusion you come to.
Yeah, I agree. But let us know what you guys think happened. We're super interested to hear your guys' thoughts. And until next time, we'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.